boys.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the show. We are your hosts, Collin Peters here.
John Setter here.
You know, it hasn't been long enough, all right? There's been 3 fucking months, and I want to strangle you.
You guys like this podcast. My buddies make it real good. Wait, so I want to get a picture of that also. Your reaction is priceless. Here, smile for a second. Just.
You motherfucker. I'm gonna fucking stab you.
Well, you can hardly see nothing in that one.
Oh, God. For anybody who doesn't know, we're going to be talking about one of the mothers of inventions when it comes to horror movies here. And we haven't talked about it yet on the show, and that is the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little making in the process. We haven't, like I said, we haven't talked about it in a while. Well, like early on in the show, because everybody knows we're huge horror fans and we talk about it a lot, we kind of saved some of the better movies that we really loved for like a time where we got more professional with microphones instead of just recording on our phones. But ironically, we never really even brought it up until now.
Actually, I think we tried to cover this movie 3 years ago, and then it just kind of got pushed to the corner for other films.
Yeah, probably like I said with the
cover it.
microphones and
Yeah.
Well, I think that, and I was adamant about not watching it or talking about it because this movie, for a while, I felt was tainted by its sequels. It wasn't until I rewatched it, I want to say like probably last year, and it was actually like I really enjoyed it. And then I was like, well, then I started pushing for it because it was actually a really good movie.
And you know what? You're not the only one. Mm-hmm. I remember when I first saw it, and I can kind of say like one reason why I didn't like it originally was because I grew up more with Freddy, Jason, and Michael. And really, Texas Chainsaw Massacre it has similarities, but it's nothing like them.
No.
I mean, Leatherface is the main antagonist here, and you know, he's not even really the main monster in the movie.
I was say, is he though? Because I feel like
the family really is the main monster.
He's more or less just like
a lackey.
Yeah. You know, he's what people don't understand about that character is, and that's the other problem with Texas Chainsaw, is nothing is really fully explained. Like, for the longest time, to explain Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it is kind of like the typical, you know, kids going out somewhere, go wandering off from an area where they're not supposed to, and here they stumble across a killer. You know, it's almost like cliche horror, but at that time, this was like the original one that did it.
Yeah, this came out 4 years before Halloween.
Exactly.
And this movie with Black Christmas and Peeping Tom, they kind of set the template going forward for slashers.
But there was no like real slasher, like teens go off, get killed, and there was some sort of supernatural element to like Freddy and Michael and Jason. But Leatherface is strictly real.
Yeah,
he's very human. A big dude.
Yeah.
Good old Gunnar Hansen. But that's the one thing you pointed out, Colin, is that I love that things are not explained in this movie, which makes it a masterclass in terror. That's what makes this movie even better, in my opinion, because I still think it's in the top 5 scariest films of all time.
Oh, hands down. I think Jeff and I had this conversation, too, where, you know, he even said to me, I think you need to give it a chance, because I was saying for quite a while, I watched it once, and I was like, I just didn't see the big deal with it. And he said, no, I think you need to give it another chance. And I was like, okay, yeah, because like you also said, too, I felt like it was tainted by the sequels in a way. Like, 2 was entertaining. I did enjoy the remake. Like, I know it gets a little more credit now for being entertaining. It's more of a slasher. It's more like Freddy or Jason, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that's why I liked it. And it still kept in the vein of, like, what Texas Chainsaw is. It's just more, it's got like some more action, more oomph. You kind of feel for the characters. Like Jessica Biel was the main survival final girl
You
in it.
learn more about them in the remake, for sure.
And I thought it would. I remember when it first came out, people shit on it, but I was one of the few who said I didn't have a problem with it. And now it's kind of gaining traction as like, yeah, you know what, it is entertaining if you want more Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
But it definitely doesn't hold a flame to the original.
The visceral carnage of the first movie. In fact, only one person actually gets killed by a chainsaw in the original. Even though it's called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Only one person just kind of gets it across the body and in the face, and he's screaming, and then there's a big chase in the woods. But that's a really great part of it. But I remember when I first saw this movie in freshman year in high school, getting more used to those gateway horror movies, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare. This was the first movie that I saw where I thought, maybe I shouldn't be watching this movie right now, because even just the opening credits, the imagery.
Oh, the crawl?
The crawl. The imagery, the iconic camera flash going off, and then even the credits sequence, I kept telling myself, maybe I shouldn't be watching this. Even the fucking corpse effigy on top of the tombstone. I'm like, well, I really don't want to eat right now.
Yo, that's what this movie did. It sets a crazy tone right away.
The funniest thing, I never noticed that they were digging while everything was happening.
Yeah.
The flashes were happening.
Grave digging is happening. Grave robbing.
And that was the thing. I'm watching it last night, and I hear the shovel. I'm like, really? It took me this long to realize they're actually digging them up as we're doing everything.
Did you guys know that John Larroquette from Night Court does the voice of the crawl in the beginning?
I remember hearing that when they did the newest sequel.
And he did it again in 2003.
Yeah.
So It's funny how he's been a staple for that. I think that's cool, because anybody who hasn't ever watched or know John Larroquette, he's a super fucking talented actor. And he's funny as hell. I grew up watching Night Court with my parents, and that was a funny fucking show, and he was one of the funniest guys in it. But I just thought that was so cool to hear that he was just some out-of-work actor, and I guess they said that Tobey Hooper wanted an Orson Welles impersonation, and they said, can you do Orson Welles? And he was just like, yeah, sure, I can do it, even though it doesn't sound like Orson Welles.
Not in the slightest, but it fits.
But when I had to hear that it was John Larroquette, I was like, wait, the John Larroquette? I was like, how did he get involved with that? It's like when I heard Mark Hamill was the Joker, I was like, wait, Luke Skywalker? It sounds nothing like him.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said, John, about how you like the mystery of things not being explained, I agree. It does work, and it does become effective in that sense. But there was so much shit that I still didn't understand. Was it really cannibalism? Because you didn't, it wasn't like they said, oh, we're going to eat you, or...
Right.
Maybe I just didn't get too into the movie when I first saw it to really understand that concept.
I think it's at the dinner table. You'll actually see they had fingers in the soup and stuff like that. And they're feeding Grandpa blood.
I knew about the blood.
Yes.
I mean, that was obvious.
Yeah.
They had ties to the slaughterhouse right down the street, too, so they've had a history of, just killing cattle and processing food and everything, and things stinking up the joint, because this production literally stank when they were filming certain scenes. I mean, you were dealing with Texas weather that was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, with heat lamps and lights from the film production as
Same
they're filming
costumes.
all throughout the night. Dry blood is getting basically hardened on their own bodies right now, and no one's having a good time. It was a brutal production to be a part of. It was tough.
Yeah, they used real meat, and they let it get rank, because they said they would be 8 to 12, 16-hour days. I think the dinner scene at the very end of the movie was also 2 days or something crazy.
They ended up filming it during the day with black trash bags over the windows.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I heard, I don't know if it was a bright idea on their part, all the stuff that started rotting, they took it out back and lit it on fire. So during that scene, that shit's burning, and they're trying to film. So you got rotting meat, burnt flesh coming through.
And they said Gunnar Hansen's B.O.
Yeah, dude, he looked like he was rank.
Ooh, yeah. I forget how old Gunnar Hansen was in this movie. Was it 26 or I forget exactly how old he was, but he was actually younger than I thought. I thought he was a guy in his late 30s.
They said that the youngest guy actually was the grandfather.
Oh yeah, with all the makeup.
Oh, they said 36 hours of makeup they put through that guy.
They said he was 19 years old. He was playing grandpa.
Oh, jeez.
Dude, I would hate that. Just
he looked like a living corpse
all day, yeah.
Another thing I think works in this movie's favor is actually the runtime. This is a tight 80-minute long movie, and I think if it was like 15 minutes or 20 minutes longer, it'd all be filler.
I agree.
It would seem pointless to have it in there. So this is just an 80-minute straight, no bullshit, cut to the chase thriller.
No, you're right. It does just like one after another, which is really a way every good movie should be. Is, you know, no bullshit. There wasn't even any. I mean, like maybe like when the two kids are just hanging out at the house at first before they go in, and they're just looking around. But it's supposed to build like a what's the. I think that was the other thing. Sometimes there were scenes like at the very beginning, you don't feel like anything cautious is really happening, but you see all these dilapidated cars and some strange stuff outside of the house that is like, what's up with this? But there's a lack of music. I think the one time you hear some sort of original music was when Leatherface makes the first kill.
Yeah.
And then he slams the door, and you just hear this boom.
It's mostly like crashing cymbals and just sound effects.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah.
But I think that first walkthrough of the house is to show you the layout of the house. That's what I was taking notice to. Because like once they finally let Leatherface loose, everyone starts running around. You actually get to see more of the layout. You saw how the room's connected. You saw that door was more useless. It was more of an effect when it shut, because like literally the door's open over here.
Yeah.
To their left. Yeah. Oh my god.
Well, you do kind of get an early warning about what these characters are getting into, especially when they pick up the damn hitchhiker. That should say all they need to know going forward. Like, if this one guy in Texas is crazy, imagine what a whole family of this type of character would be like, especially since he starts cutting himself in the van and he's lighting Franklin's picture on fire. And he starts cutting him with a straight razor. You're already creeped out to begin with, even though they were just going to pay respects to family members at a gravesite. Well, that's how it started, right?
It was about the grave robbing. They wanted to make sure that, was it Grandpa?
That's right. He was intact. He wasn't actually confiscated or stolen.
Not the killer's grandfather.
Yeah,
the
right.
Kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a girl and a brother, and the brother's in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. And I forget, like, her boyfriend's the driver, right?
Jerry.
And
Jerry's his name, yeah.
And they have like another couple who are friends that are going along with them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I forget. Were they invited just because, like, yeah, we'll go with you for support?
I think it was more or less a drive, because like they all seem like they were hippies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they were just like, oh, cool, just go to this house, see what we hear gas, we need gas, whatever. And that's what I think it was. There was no sense of urgency. It was just they needed some gas, get the fuck out of there.
It's hot. Can we find a swimming hole?
And they even like meet that cook at the stop, and they say, "Oh, we're going by the Sawyer house," and he goes, "No, you don't want to go anywhere near the Sawyer house."
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he says the best barbecue in Texas.
Oh boy.
When you lo and behold find out the cook is actually part of the Sawyer family that warned him not to go near there,
mm-hmm.
and here they're a family of cannibals. And the hitchhiker who was crazy is part of the family.
Yes, he is.
They're all related to Leatherface.
Taking pictures, talking about the slaughterhouse and how, oh, no, you don't want to use the air gun. You want to use a mallet to beat the cows up. That's the best way to do it.
The air gun was too corporate. It took too many jobs away from people.
No, you bashed him real good. It's sweet, got to it. Fucking character. And that actor, I forget his name, forgive me, but he said that this was the worst thing he's ever done, being in this movie, and he said he'd rather be back in Vietnam over there than he'd rather be doing this movie again.
Well, it was that rough, like we were saying.
Yeah, he said it was rough for him. I'd rather be back in Vietnam than doing this again.
That's crazy.
But on a side note, I think a Texas sheriff actually shook his hand when the movie was done because of his character, they were able to drop 18% of crime in the area because people stopped picking up hitchhikers because of him. So the moral of the story is, don't pick up hitchhikers. C. Thomas Howell didn't get that memo, and he still picked up Rucker Hauer. Like, what the fuck, man?
Oh, fuck, that was C.
The
Thomas
hitcher.
Howell in that movie. Yeah.
He didn't get the memo.
Oh, my God.
That's a creepy scene, though.
Oh, there's so many creepy scenes in Texas Chainsaw, and like I said, I didn't appreciate them before, but for anybody else who doesn't know, Texas Chainsaw was inspired by the true story of Ed Gein, who was a real grave robber. He did have issues with his mother that affected him psychologically, and he did eat people. He did use their skin as clothing, and just a lot of like really macabre, dark shit.
Oh yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the true story of Ed Gein is just creepy as hell, and that was the main inspiration, just like how he inspired Norman Bates in Psycho, and also I think mainly Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. Not really Hannibal Lecter, but I mean, there's the cannibalism part, and then there's the making the skin suit part. So
Right.
it's probably like a weird
The
combination.
necrophilia part.
It's kind of like, you know, you take Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill and add them together, and you get Ed Gein. You know, it was that influence.
Mhm.
And I actually saw Silence of the Lambs like after it first came out on VHS too. Like I said before, my parents let me watch so much stuff as a young kid, and Silence of the Lambs was a movie that creeped me out. It was like one of the first true crime movies I ever watched, and my parents were like really good at desensitizing me as a kid to say things like they call him Hannibal the Cannibal because the cannibal is somebody who eats people, and I'm like, they do that? You know, like they would literally tell me, but like in a comforting or natural way, and like, yeah, they're making suits out of people's skin and weird stuff. You know, they're telling me this at a really young age, and I'm just like, what? But you know, it didn't like give me nightmares or nothing, but it did open my eyes to a very early age that people are like, there are bad people out there that do that, and there is just something really low for somebody to just like take your, like, want to kill you, cut your skin off, and wear it themselves, or use it for furniture, eat you, and you know, just like desecrate you without like having any sort of feeling or remorse at all. It's just really, and then to dig up your body and just use your body parts for decorations, and it's just bizarre and weird, and just so low of somebody to do that, you know.
Yeah, like you said, no personal feelings for anybody.
It's really
well-being.
like the definition of psychotic.
Yeah, I actually thought that I knew about Ed Gein when I saw this movie, but I actually thought, because for the longest time, that this was a true story, thinking, well, Ed Gein was in Wisconsin and this guy is down in Texas, so I thought they were actually two separate people. But then I was like, oh no, there is no real Leatherface John. It's just Ed Gein.
Well, the funny part was, I remember Jeff's dad was trying to tell us that Texas Chainsaw was a true story, and I tried telling him, no, it's not. I said it's based on a true story. He's like, no, man, that was all real.
It was real.
I was like, no, it's not. You know,
Stop fucking with me.
And then he said, no, when I was in the military, I was stationed down in Texas, and there was the house. And I was like, the house that they filmed the movie at was there, not the actual crime house. Oh, and then he tried to tell me that originally it was rated PG, and I'm like, no, it was. They wanted it to be rated PG.
I don't get that.
But they couldn't.
You wanted everybody to see that fucking movie, right?
There's no fucking way you could have gotten away with a PG rating for this. They got an X.
No,
there's
really.
No way.
I can kind of see why, because there was like hardly any blood. They didn't actually show the actual hits and the violence taking place, maybe except for the girl on the hook.
Yeah, even that. They showed like almost contact and then stop. And then doesn't it show like the bucket underneath?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the thing that makes it more R-rated than anything is just the fact that there's all the macabre stuff and the sinister people in it.
Yeah.
And what the message of the movie is. Like, the imagery is probably more R-rated because there's like really no swearing. There's hardly any blood. There's like blood spatter, and there's the blood buckets that they use for the actual slaughter.
There was Kirk who got the meat hammer over the head. It actually sounds like his neck was broken when the hammer came down his head. And you actually see his body writhing in pain as like blood squirting everywhere. And then you just see that steel door shut. Almost like Tobey Hooper saying, it's real now.
And the history of the rating system was PG-13 didn't come out until Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. That's why if people say, well, why couldn't you just make it PG-13 then? Because PG-13 didn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Temple of Doom set it forward, and then I think Red Dawn was the first movie that actually got the PG-13 rating.
Oh, wow.
I think. Because it was proposed by Steven Spielberg to have a PG-13 rating after the carnage that was Temple of Doom and hearts being ripped out by Mola Ram and everything, so.
That was sick.
It was. Yeah, that room, I forget the girl's name, the second one to go with the meat hook, but yeah, that room itself was disgusting. One chicken being suspended in the air, and then you have like a bone thrown with feathers everywhere, and just, ugh.
Yeah, the house in the room where you see the like that Ed Gein stuff where it's like the bones are the furniture. Like weren't like bones that were arms actually on the arms of the chair?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It was like a love seat or a couch they made out of just bones.
Right.
The faces were lampshades. It's like, what the fuck? Like, what possesses people? And it's not just
To do
Leatherface. It's like the whole fucking family.
Yeah. Like I said, not knowing is even scarier. Why they're doing what they're doing. Hell, even Sally, when she was tied to the chair in the dinner scene, she was tied to arms, severed arms that were on the armrest.
Oh, it was crazy.
Ugh.
It definitely is a movie that, like you said, you don't want to eat while you watch it. And I've heard other people say it, like famous YouTuber Chris Suckman, who does movie reviews. He said the exact same thing. This isn't a movie that you want to sit down and eat, and usually you can just be like, oh, yeah, like here's Freddy, like hacking up somebody, and there's a gross scene of it. I know it's fake, but I think Texas Chainsaw makes it feel real. It is that like that gritty 16mm look. It has like that like it's not really handheld. There are tracking shots, you know.
It is more professionally made than you think.
Yeah,
like,
but
there's really good dolly
it definitely
shots.
has like that low budget, like anybody could film this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like a Blair Witch before Blair Witch, where it was like, oh yeah, this was a true story, but it was based on a true story.
Right.
Or I should say inspired. Usually the key term there for anybody who doesn't know is if it says inspired by a true story, that means you took inspiration from something, plucked it, used it, and then it becomes that.
Yeah.
That's usually how it goes. When it says based on a true story, that's more of like a biography type movie. I think maybe the rules have changed to that now, or they just actually do biographies, or in order to tell a biography, but you can't get the rights to it. Like, say somebody wants to do an Ed Gein movie, but they just kind of do like a Silence of the Lambs sort of thing. They'd say this was based on a true story.
Yeah.
And then that's how it goes.
Or it comes off the source material.
Yeah.
Because The Silence of the Lambs was a book and then became a movie, but there was no book to this. I don't think there was, at least.
Tobey Hooper was saying that he had relatives from Wisconsin that would come to Texas and were telling him it as a scary story because he knew it would get them all like riled up, and that's how it stuck, and I got fascinated with him.
Yeah. I don't think Tobey Hooper gets enough credit as a director. He never did.
I don't think he does either.
You know, this movie is the pinnacle of his career, and then I would say Poltergeist would be number 2, and then for me it's The Funhouse, and he also made other movies like Eaten Alive and even the vampire sci-fi saga that was what the hell is it called? Space Vampire. It's not Space Vampires, but it's Life Force. Like that was another movie that I don't think got enough credit. It was Life Force. But a lot of people have said years and years ago saying it wasn't Tobey Hooper who made Poltergeist, it was Steven Spielberg the whole time. He was barely on set. Like, people are now finally realizing, guys, shut the hell up. He was there on set. He did direct this cast, and this is very much so his movie. People kept thinking it was never him who directed Poltergeist. It was him. They thought it was all Steven Spielberg, what they're saying, behind the curtain, pulling all the strings and really giving the actors notes and shit like that. But people are saying, no.
Steven Spielberg was a producer,
yes,
so
he was.
There are times where he can interject something, and then even as a filmmaker, I'm sure he might give like some insightful stuff, but From what I understood, Tobey Hooper was behind the camera.
Decades ago, there were articles everywhere saying it wasn't Tobey Hooper, it was Spielberg the whole time. But now people are waking up and realizing, guys, Tobey Hooper did make this movie. This is his project. He did make this film.
I think some people, they just have to live in that lore where it's like, no, like Steven Spielberg makes all these good movies, so there's no way that this other guy who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre could make this. You know, it's like no, the guy who does Jaws and Indiana Jones did this.
It was definitely him.
Yeah, it has to be.
No.
You know, I like this movie. It has to be. I didn't like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It had to be Spielberg.
Right.
Like,
Steven Spielberg hired him because of his work on Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, it's like those people that they can't like you can't have anything better than them, so they gotta say something.
I think the one thing that actually sparked it all was the fact that he actually did film part of the second unit. And that's what sparked the whole fucking thing.
But that's totally common though,
Yeah.
where a second unit director will do that. Like Brian McDonald filmed some of the scenes in Batman, because sometimes you're over here, you're over there. Hell, I think Sean S. Cunningham directed some of Nightmare on Elm Street, because Wes Craven was like, I'm gonna film this over here. I trust you to film this because we just need to get a couple more shots, and this is how we got to do it.
Yeah.
That's totally common.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's not, like, it's not really known, but there's a lot more behind the scenes that a lot of people don't realize. But do the directors and the editors have the final say in it before the producers, like, say, oh, no, we got to make it more commercial or something? If it's a studio-related film? Yeah, of course that happens. But yeah, it's totally common where you get a second unit director and just be like, hey, on this day, we need to film over here, but we can get this location. But if we can have these actors available, can you set up crew and do this while we do that? That is totally common, which is probably what happened. But people don't get that. And like you said, Jeff, as soon as they heard and found out about that, oh my God, it's really his movie. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. He said, she said, all the speculation leaking from one side to another and just false.
Yeah, that's why I don't pay no mind to it.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I agree. Toby Hooper doesn't get the credit for being as good as he is. He has made some movies that were weird, like The Mangler. But
everyone has their misses, for sure.
I mean, it was interesting and it was ambitious because it was different. But so was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, originally, it was going to be called Leatherface.
Actually, I thought it was going to be called Head Cheese.
Or Stalking Leatherface. I don't know about Head Cheese, but I do remember hearing Leatherface or Stalking Leatherface was the original title.
So I know I did hear Head Cheese because that's what the one line the hitchhiker said, and that's how they were thinking. That's the title right there, because that's the forewarning going forward. This whole talk about the slaughterhouse and Head Cheese, my brother makes it real good. That's how they got the idea to make the original title. Then they changed it, obviously. But
that sounds like one of those really corny horror movies.
Head Cheese. Oh yeah, it does.
It's like there was that movie about a killer tire, and it was called Rubber.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I know. I love it.
Like what?
I don't even want to look up Head Cheese because I know it's probably gonna be disgusting, but I'm curious to see how it tastes.
After this movie, I don't know.
I don't think I ever want
to. Like, there is.
They describe how they make it too. I'm like, no, thank you.
And decaying body, like, there's just so much gross factor in there that you just it. Like, you know how movies aren't really filmed in area like it. But you know that it was filmed in Texas. They admit it, which sometimes it isn't always the case. But it does feel, and I hate hot weather. I do not like hot weather at all. I hate summer. And all I saw in that was I would just be miserable as fuck, on that set myself, and in like that situation with the feathers and the dirt and then the grime and the blood. Oh man,
they didn't have much money to pay the actors either, that's for sure.
No.
But you can actually feel the heat on that screen with certain shots, especially the one where they were visiting the house and then they're going down to check out the swimming hole. You just like see the heat and everything. You can actually see heat on camera. It's awful.
No, you feel gritty after watching this movie. Like, you want to shower.
You do want to shower.
The amount of shit that's in that house and the amount of shit that they do to these kids, you're just like, dude, I feel like I need a shower.
I mean, hell, running through those that like tree branch forest with Franklin and Sally, and then Leatherface. It's a very brutal scene. What happens to fucking Franklin? I mean, even though you can almost see it as like an off-screen kill, but you're actually seeing it happening. It's like it's masked with shadow and branches, and you see blood splatter patterns hitting Leatherface with every thrust he's making. And he had to slow his pace down because he was catching up to Sally. And he actually that's why, like, in certain shots, he's, like, dancing around, cutting off some branches to slow his pace down, even with the boots he was wearing.
That's the other thing. Some of those scenes, they did actually have the chain on the saw.
Yeah.
Like Kurt, who got bashed with the hammer, and then when his girlfriend gets hung on the meat hook, that he said that when he was laying down, they used the real chainsaw, and they had to, like, cut it, make it look like it was away from his head as they were cutting his head off in that scene, and he could feel the hot oil hitting his face, and he was trying to, like, not not look like he's breathing, and
Yeah, dude, that's some scary shit.
That is terrifying, right? I didn't know that. I know Sally cut herself a couple times running through the branches in the woods and everything, and some of that blood on her pants is real blood. It's not fake.
Also, they said that when she was screaming at the end in the truck, they did that scene and the dinner scene so much that by the time that the film finally wrapped, that she was just kind of like, okay, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I found that to be interesting, and it's like, and again, it's one of those, it's sad, but it works.
There's some great shots in that dinner scene too, especially when he gets really close to the cornea and the eye. You can actually see the veins in the eyeball and everything.
And the in and out as she's screaming, like you really feel that descent and the madness with her, and that desperation that just, I just want to get out of here. I just want to get out. And they're like just psychologically messing with her, like creeping up to her, laughing at her.
You.
It's like, you slaughtered all her friends. They're on your dinner plates right now.
Rotting away.
And then also it's fucked up that like you see that scene where Franklin has a piece of sausage in his mouth when they get to their grandparents' old house, and you, after knowing what you know, you're like, that's a person.
At first I thought that was the baby Ruth that was in his pocket. I could be wrong. That's what I thought it was, because he had a candy bar in his pocket in the car at one point. And actually, speaking of that car, that blood pattern that the hitchhiker puts on there, it kind of goes away in a few shots. It's like, oh, they didn't put it there. It's clean now.
They said that van was one of the crew members' vans.
Oh, really?
To use to move and haul stuff back
to save
and forth
money, I'm
set.
sure.
And he said, yeah, we can use my van for the work too. And then originally at the beginning shot, they wanted a dead dog, but they thought it was too disturbing because it was a domesticated animal.
Mm.
And then they found a horse on the road, like a random dead horse, and they thought maybe we could use that, and it was too much. And then they found an armadillo, and then I guess the prop guy took it back for a taxidermy, and he studied it, put it together, and did that.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He also said he took molds of girls and just took parts of their faces, and that's how he put Leatherface's mask together.
He's got 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. I didn't realize this either, that there are 4 family members to the Sawyer family, the crazies in total. There was the hitchhiker, the cook, Leatherface, and then the grandfather. And the grandfather, first you just see up in the attic. You think he's dead, and then they bring him down, and he's barely alive.
Yeah.
And then the cook, you assume is the father, but I think really the cook, Leatherface, and the hitchhiker are supposed to be brothers.
I think so. And then there's the grandfather's wife that was the corpse in the chair right across from him. Very Norman Bates right there.
And they were saying that Leatherface, when he changes faces, it's almost like he takes on that personality. So like at the dinner table, he was almost like the mother figure.
Yeah.
And the older brother, the cook, is the father figure, and the hitchhiker is kind of the kid. And I was like, oh, that's a weird way to look at it, but I can definitely see it. Because Toby Hooper did say there is actually a lot of satire in it, and he said, I was insulted that people didn't laugh at it originally, because it was like some underlining satire in there. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he said was, at first they got scared, and then it took a little while, but then they started laughing at the jokes in it. And part of me's like, what jokes?
What part of this is funny?
I think because like corporate America and the corporate greed with like the gun, it's taking away jobs, but they're making more money.
Yeah.
There was that in there. The hippie movement. They also talked about the lies of Vietnam and the lies of the news telling people, and I guess he sounded like he wasn't too big of a fan of Nixon either, so he like added like some sort of political satire in there as well. I mean, you kind of have to keep an eye out for it, because if you're just like immersed in the story, you really don't get it. Mm-hmm. And like you said, John, it's a tight 80 minutes that you're focused on the characters. Yeah, you don't really feel for them, and you're just kind of like, it's another victim here or there. Plus, what happens to them is basically all different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, if you're going to have an 80-minute movie, of course you're going to sacrifice character development. So if you're going to take away one thing, make sure the other departments are just as strong or even better. Mm-hmm. So your direction's got to be top-notch. Your writing's got to be top-notch of what you're able to get. and just your overall cinematography and your scope of the entire film. But you brought up a good point about like the personalities that Leatherface takes on when he puts on the different masks. I didn't pick this up until this morning when I watched the movie. When he puts on his the female face without the makeup, he's almost talking gibberish to the cook. It kind of reminded me of like the Peanuts teachers from the comics. Like, it's just like what is he saying? I didn't know he was actually talking in those moments, but you can hear like mumbling gibberish, but apparently there were actual lines that Toby Hooper gave to Gunnar Hansen and said, make this gibberish, or something that you think your cook brother would understand, you know?
Well, I think originally Gunnar Hansen wasn't supposed to be Leatherface. I think they got some actor, but he was drunk. So they talked to Gunnar, and he even said he had to do some practicing, and one of the things he did was he went to a children's hospital for either autistic or just they couldn't live alone and had certain disabilities, like special needs in a way. And he said he just pretty much sat and studied them because most of the time he was going to be mute. And he said by the second or third day, it got to the point where they were trying to decipher whether or not he was like somebody there to just observe or a patient. Mm-hmm. He just kind of like watched, like took it all in and then brought it out.
Helped his performance, definitely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't even think Gunnar Hansen really gets the credit that he deserves because people think you just see Leatherface and think he's just
a killer.
Exactly.
A mindless killer.
But really, I think he's just manipulated into doing that stuff because there's that scene where he has his head on his hands on his head and he's like, oh, and you're kind of like, what is this guy doing now? Like, should I feel sympathy for him? This is weird. And then you realize he's not expecting these people to come to the house. Yeah. Like, maybe the cook or the hitchhiker kill people and then he just kind of does the job. And he's just dead. Like, I gotta kill these people. They're in the house. Right. They know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And
more people are going to be coming now.
Yeah, and he's
the cops.
And he's like a special needs in a way. He's just like he's basically the muscle of the family, and they just say sick him. Yeah, like you do the job.
Right, the rabid dog without a leash.
And we don't even know if he himself is really deformed. You can kind of see something's up because his teeth are a little messed up.
Yeah, definitely had prosthetic teeth or that was put into his mouth in order to help sell the character.
But it's like, what is it that makes him want to wear somebody else's skin as a mask for his face? Like, is there something underneath that he doesn't like about himself?
Or maybe he doesn't like himself at all.
So is it mental that like maybe he feels like he's better with somebody else's skin? Maybe he feels like wearing an attractive person's face is better than his face.
Probably.
Like there's so many things that we can think about that because it goes unexplained. I know in the remake it showed that he had a deformity, and that's
I think also in the remake they explained that they were inbred. But if you see a lot of the traits between the three that they might have been, but they never actually come out and say it. Especially that weird scene where Gunnar sits down with the mask on, he starts licking his teeth and lips is kind of like really unnerving. Because you're like, well, what's he going to do, man?
Yeah, this was like a true crime movie before true crime was there. Except instead of just hearing about it, we're witnessing it. And I think that was the other thing. They didn't make a movie like that before. Where you heard the true crime stuff. You heard the Ed Gein stories. But here we're watching it in real time. Yeah. And that was the other feeling that it gave. And that just disturbs you a lot more than anything. And it feels real. That's the other good thing that Texas Chainsaw does. It creates a feeling that makes you feel uneasy that the other movies are just, it's a fun slasher. Yeah. I mean, the lack of music helps out a lot.
Wait, hold on. You said a fun slasher? Dude, this is not fun.
I mean a fun slasher like Scream or Nightmare.
Okay. Yeah,
it's
the opposite of fun.
Like I said, there really was like no rewatchability for this for me for a long time until you said check it out again, and I thought okay, and I watched it again, especially with the knowledge that I know as being a filmmaker. I was like, yeah, they totally captured what they needed to do.
Right. I mean, if you want an exercise in low budget filmmaking that creates a visceral, terrifying experience, I watch this as a reference. It's an easy go-to movie because you can bang it out in 80 minutes and get enough from one viewing of it to have a better mindset of if you want to make a movie of your own going forward, So they did it with very little, next to nothing. It was a successful independent movie, probably the biggest since until Halloween came around 4 years later.
It was.
It did really well at the box office.
And I know that the actors and the crew were supposed to get more, but whoever they got to finance the movie totally shafted them over through shady deals. They might have even had some sort of mob.
There was a mob connection to the production company, yeah. And then they went out of business. They filed for bankruptcy, and then finally, like years and years down the road, people finally got paid properly for their work for this movie.
As they should.
Yeah. That's kind of the thing with like Night of the Living Dead, because that's the reason why they did the remake, Night 90, is because people weren't paid properly for the original movie, which is why they decided to remake it. So they could finally give those people the money that they deserve because of a copyright issue.
And then also now with the help of conventions and merchandise, depending on like how they can license or if they can have some sort of cut of their likeness, that always helps. I always find that if you can provide that for an actor, that's always sometimes better than giving them so much money up front, because that money up front is taken out of the movie. But if they get a cut of this stuff afterwards, you can make the movie and focus on that, and then the real money comes later.
Yeah.
Which is common.
It's very common, yes.
It's the same thing in any sort of like sporting or entertainment business yet. Like if a sports athlete can make more money through commercials and merchandise, they can save money and help like get other talent in to help the team win, and then in that case builds more success. And same like in pro wrestling, like you get so much money up front, but then you get bonuses for pay-per-views and merchandise and stuff like that. So it's the way to go.
Super. That wasn't the point for the cast for the Blair Witch Project. When that movie made $248 million at the box office, the cast was given a fruit basket.
Yeah.
Fucking assholes.
Yeah, like shipped from like one end of the country to the other. Like, gee, thanks.
Sorry you went through hell. Here's a fruit basket, asshole.
Really not much that you could do for merchandise either. I mean, people make their own sticks.
Yeah.
Like honestly. Posters and just shirts that say Blair Witch Project.
I think the grandfather in Texas Chainsaw, his payment was marijuana.
I mean, at that point, you're wearing makeup all day.
He didn't have any lines. It's like, you're probably on set for one day. We can't give you much. Here's a weed.
Yeah.
Here's some weed for you.
I mean, that
probably helped his performance.
Yeah. That's probably why he kept dropping the hammer.
Yeah, I know, right?
So fucking high. But when you were talking about the comedy element, when the cook finally comes home and he sees the fucking door chopped up, I laugh at that every time. Like, of all the things you're mad about, the door.
Your brother fucked up the damn door.
Oh my god. And the fact that like it's obliterated, it's like, well.
Right.
And then it gets even more fucked up at the very end when they go to chase Sally because she does escape. No, actually, I laugh more at the truck driver that tries to help her escape.
Oh, he got right the fuck off screen.
And then he throws the hammer at Leatherface. He's just like, ugh. And then you see the bang, and Leatherface does that like, ugh.
Well, then the chainsaw cuts his leg.
Yo, I actually started feeling bad for Marilyn Burns because the amount of screaming she did. And don't get me wrong, that woman can scream loud and long. Like that last third of that movie, she's just fucking running and screaming. She's jumping through windows, and it's not even stopping. I'm like, I felt bad.
Yeah, I was just like, how many days of vocal rest did you need in between? Because there's no way you could scream that constant without blowing your vocal cords out. I mean, my God.
You're right. You feel it with her there. And I think also the shots of her eye and those in and outs, and then them taunting her, because it is kind of like it's almost like you're next, but when is it happening?
Right.
Exactly.
And that's even more terrifying. And there's nobody there to help you except yourself. And she's tied down and strapped. That's the other thing about this. Even in the remakes, even though they were more Hollywood-like, but there were emotion, the characters that you could feel, and when you saw things, and like I think it was the prequel actually to the remake where they just randomly pulled that one girl's teeth out and just had her sitting at the dinner table and were like, oh, isn't she so pretty? And but we're gonna kill her, and they just like cut her throat.
Yeah.
And it's like,
fuck, Arlie Ermey was more terrifying than Leatherface in those movies.
I don't know, that Leatherface was scary.
He's big,
movies.
big guy.
Yeah.
His name Thomas Hewitt. They call him Thomas Hewitt.
Yeah, and it wasn't the Sawyer.
One reason why I wanted to watch the remake so bad is because they said like the beginning and the end were the best part, where you actually see the raw footage of them going through the house and the handprints, and then Leatherface comes at the very end, chops up the film crew.
Yeah, I did. That's another story for another time.
It
But
is.
I think it's cool that remake does get its credit as being it's entertaining. Yeah, it doesn't have the same feeling as the first one does. Of course not. Of course it would not. It was made for money, but yet it was made with like some rewatchability that like has more fun value to it than this original one.
Oh, I know.
This original one feels gritty.
Well, Arlie Ermey's performance, he's like awkwardly funny too, like in moments like, well, get the hell over there. She's better than a goddamn doornail. Making jokes in between, but he's also creepy and unsettling in many parts, but he does add some dry humor thrown in there. But yeah, the hitchhiker gets plowed by that goddamn truck. Clearly a dummy, but it's really funny though.
That's funny. Overall, I can't really say I have a least favorite scene. I think Franklin is probably the most annoying character.
All right, hold on. I've never wanted someone to die so fucking much until Franklin. I'm like, I feel bad that I want a kid in a wheelchair to die, but it's the fact that he is the most unbearable character in the entire movie. I felt bad for everybody else.
It's really the house scene where he's like truly unbearable. He's just bring Franklin up. Like, come on, man, what are you doing?
I feel like he was one of those guys who was just spoiled because they felt so bad for him because he was in his wheelchair, so he felt like he had a right to be annoying.
Probably.
And that's why other people were just like, oh, fuck Franklin.
Just got to tolerate him for now, then.
Yeah, and everybody enabled him, and he just was like, I'm the kid in the wheelchair.
I can't do anything.
Yeah,
right.
You feel sorry for me, and that's why I'll be annoying.
Oh my god.
That's the kind of guy he came across, like somebody we know.
Well, he got the worst in the movie.
Yeah.
So if there's any like consolation to this, it's like he did get it the worst.
Yeah, you feel more bad for the guy in Friday 2 in the wheelchair than you do for Franklin. But and maybe that like all the kids at the grandfather's house scene, I was kind of like, okay, you're there, you go in, and it's like, but there's nothing there. It's dilapidated.
There's no development to that.
I was like, all right. I think they could have easily have gotten there and said, well, we made it, but we ran out of gas.
Yeah, they didn't need to show the house. They didn't need to show Franklin being unbearable.
They're basically just lambs at the slaughter.
Yeah, that's probably like my least favorite part about it.
Okay.
I would say honestly, like I think one of the coolest things not about the movie is the fact that this movie is starting to get like more of a fan base because of the sequels and because of that 50-year sequel too. But they took the time to actually make a game that's coming out I think next year, and it actually takes place before this movie. But it's a multiplayer, so I'm wondering how much story they're really gonna have. But it is cool that they are doing that and kind of bring new stuff to light. I think Kane Hodder's doing the mapping again. So it's going to be fun.
Give him a leather face.
Yeah.
I know he said that he did have like a stunt scene in 3, but if he's doing the mapping, then it's kind of like he can be fully Leatherface. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, because it was, when I first saw it, I'm like, all right, it's a Texas Chainsaw. I'm like, it's a game. I thought it was going to be like everything else that's coming out. But as I saw some gameplay footage and everything, like they try to do the original some justice. And I'm hoping that that's exactly what happens. But like I said, I'm curious to see now we're getting all these sequels, remakes, whatever, and I'm hoping they start dying off and they kind of like go back to making it more of a horror movie instead of a fucking comedy.
I agree.
Yeah.
What they did with the recent one doesn't hold a flame to the original.
Talk about that
It
one.
was a fucking joke. That's what that was.
God, it was.
Yeah, you want to talk about political satire. It was all over that thing, and they made Leatherface more of a monster that couldn't be beat.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
no, that's not him.
Oh, and he was only 74 years old.
Oh yeah, of course.
Is that how old he was?
74. Supposed to be 74 years old, and this guy can jumpstart a chainsaw with gas that dissipated years ago, and he's moving like he's a marathon runner with this fucking chainsaw. Like, you gotta be kidding me.
And Sally is the new Laurie Strode from Halloween 2018.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Which
that's original.
Yeah, I know. That was not Marilyn Burns at all, because she passed away in 2014 at 65. So that was an actress that they just hired to make her look like her. Yeah, and totally don't give two fucks about her at all in that movie.
No, but overall, I gotta say, I definitely changed my tone with Texas Chainsaw. I think it's a solid horror movie. I think it's one of those that really, it almost to me doesn't really fit in with Freddy, Jason, and Michael, even though they do lump Leatherface in there. Like you know, it's like the big five or whatever.
Yeah.
But, and I can see why, but I just feel like because that supernatural element isn't there, you could take him out.
He's a human.
Yeah. But the overall feeling of Texas, like, it made my girlfriend uneasy. Like, I've had her watch Friday with me, Halloween, and she never was, like, big in the horror, and she loved them, but then at the same time, she was like, when Texas Chainsaw came up, she said, I can't do torture, I can't do that. And I totally get it, because it is a more gritty feeling movie. It puts you in that you're with the killer, and you feel like I said, at the dinner scene when they're coming up and doing the taunting and the laughing, and it's like they're your friends on the dinner plate, and you're tied to the chair. You know you're next. It's just a matter of when, and you get that first-person perspective. That fucks you up.
Oh, yeah.
That's like your perspective as that character.
Yeah.
And here are the people who are going to do it to you. And you know it's going to be brutal yet. So, yeah, this movie will play with your mind like that. It's very much like a social test, really.
Favorite scene? Easily the ending where, you've got Sally driving off in the back of the pickup truck, laughing maniacally, happy that it's all over. There's no way he can catch up to me. And let's just have a shot of Leatherface just dancing with the fucking chainsaw, with the sun coming up, and just not giving two fucks that the other one got away, but we got your other friends, and I'm still here, baby. I'm still standing. My chainsaw's got plenty of gas, and I don't care that I just nearly cut my leg off.
Did you really
I'm
say
still
my
dancing.
chainsaw's got plenty of gas?
Yeah, you did.
But it's so unsettling, and it's the most.
You would say that.
Fuck you, man.
And in action movies, the guns with the endless ammo. Like, I got plenty of ammo in my guns, too. Except for the time I need to kill the boss. Oh, man. Now I'm out.
I got a generator in the back.
But
I can take gas out of that.
killed an army with one clip.
Oh, my gosh.
But yeah, just him dancing with the damn chainsaw, and then it just cuts to black, and that's the end. It's probably the most iconic thing that people relate to this movie, with Leatherface just dancing with the fucking chainsaw. Yeah. Least favorite, yeah, Franklin in the house. just that one specific scene, and throughout the whole movie, pretty much. But really, him in the damn house when they're having fun, and he's like, like, shut up, dude, just shut up, man. Oh God, I know you're in a wheelchair, but shut up, please. Can you fall down a second time? That was hilarious.
I would say, honestly, I would have never checked this movie out again because of just how gritty I felt. It wasn't until I watched, every time, Last Drive-In, and I heard Joe Bob say this is almost the perfect movie. And my brain's like, how the fuck is this the most perfect movie? So after he does the whole thing, I start watching it through a new set of eyes. I'm like, if he's saying it's the perfect movie, yeah, dude, it can be. Because it's, like you said, tight 80 minutes, they get to the fucking point, they get to the kills right away, and honestly, the final girl still escapes. There's nothing to build up, it's already here you go. And I'm like, after watching that, and like, everything that he was saying about it, hearing everything about the background, what was going on, I'm like, that kind of opened my eyes. I'm like, there's no way that I would ever watch this movie again. I'm glad I did, because even that's why, honestly, you ended up watching it.
Yeah, it's true.
And I enjoyed it more than I probably should have, because I laugh at Marilyn Burns' fucking scream every time.
You laugh at it, huh?
Laughing at her pain? Oh my
even
god.
Is that a
How-
social test?
How much and how long it goes. And I'm like, dude, this woman is so... But when I was watching it, it made it even funnier. Lexi was trying to work, and the scream's going on in the background while she's on a call.
Oh, Lord.
It's like that scene in American Psycho when Patrick Bateman's doing stomach crunches and he just has...
To the background of the
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw. I know. Of course this is your favorite movie. How about the scene where she's getting bitch slapped by a broom?
But I would have the same problem. My favorite two scenes are Leatherface fucking the door up and the brother bitching about it, and then his first appearance when the door just slams. And I was like, yeah, that's actually a frightening image too. Like after the hit and then just boom, and I'm like, what the fuck am I watching?
Yeah.
And then you kind of hear these pigs squealing, but yet there are no pigs.
He was probably
He's
just
probably
doing
making
it, yeah.
that sound
Oh,
himself.
bro.
Yeah, just to lure in the prey, you know?
Although I admit, if I saw all that shit hanging in the house, there's no...
Nope.
Yeah, I'd be like...
Gone.
Plus, I'd never just walk into somebody's random fucking house either. I mean, that...
Listen, it's the 70s. Everyone was
Dude,
different
it's
back then.
still Texas. You're born and you're given a gun right away down there. I mean,
In
come on.
Texas, they have the death penalty, and
they
they'll use it.
A little too literally.
Yeah. If you kill, we will kill you back.
You know, and I think that's another reason why you don't feel for these characters, because it's like, yo, dude, your fault. You just walked into somebody's fucking house in Texas.
Isn't that thing I said to you that technically everybody was within their right of killing them because
Yes!
they're trespassing?
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah,
So-
they can kill you
State
legally.
your ground law or whatever.
Yeah. So, little common law there. Like they say, don't mess with Texas.
You're right.
I think they actually remember Texas Chainsaw Massacre more than they do the Alamo.
Oh, no.
I'm not gonna lie, I do want to visit the house and the gas station at some
The
point.
house now is a bed and breakfast, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And it moved. It's not in that same location.
I think it's down by a river. I think that's where they moved the whole fucking
They
house.
Yeah,
definitely
they did.
relocated the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually like a very beautiful house, and you can dine in and enjoy yourself.
Oh yeah,
which
you're gonna
is
really eat there, right?
Yeah, the irony of it all, you know. I think the gas station where the barbecue is still standing,
Okay.
but the
It's actually a barbecue shack now. Not
Is it
live.
really?
Yeah.
Please be a barbecue shack.
well, it's Texas, so yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think the grandparents' house is still around.
I don't
anymore.
think it is either.
I mean, I don't think it should be to begin with. It looked like it was halfway on its way out. Anyway,
Yeah.
so to wrap things up, do you guys have anything more to add about Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I would say if you're just listening to this the first time, you've never seen it, I would say go watch it, just with caution.
Don't eat anything. Please don't.
Oddly enough, I'm still kind of interested in how that barbecue tasted because it looked amazing.
It looked like it was like someone's torso at one point.
You can see the rib cage and everything while I think she was getting beaten with the broom in the sack.
Yeah. I was like, oh god, losing my food, losing my lunch again.
I think it's a better movie the more and more you watch it, and the more you do the research and go, okay, they are cannibals, because some of that was still very vague. Some of it's also unexplained. It does leave you with an open ending, like you don't know what happens to the Sally character, and the Sawyer family still pretty much on the... Well, they're free. I mean,
Yeah,
we
they're still alive.
Clearly, we got 5 sequels after this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I think, isn't there more to the family? It's not just, the cook, and it's, just Leatherface just hops from, this family to that family.
Yeah.
Ugh, it was horrible. 2 was entertaining, and I did hear that apparently there was a Tobey Hooper cut, because there was a lot of the powers to be that had a lot to change with it. I heard Caroline Williams talk about it.
Okay.
But that's 2. I mean, this one definitely is... It's a staple in horror for a reason, and I think maybe it's a little more, now that we have so many true crime documentaries and we are a little more desensitized to seeing actual crime scene photos, it kind of does make this movie seem a little easier to, no pun intended, digest. But I definitely say give it a go. I mean, it was something that interested me right away. It's not Freddy, it's not Jason, it's not Michael, so you're going to see something very different. It'll cause a more disturbing feeling, and it is that, like, psychological, physical torture along with the disgusting nature of desecrations to bodies and what they do to human anatomy afterwards. But overall, it's a great movie. It gets better every time, and I appreciate Jeff for influencing me to watch it again.
Yeah.
Because I do see it in a different light and doing the research and knowing the history of the film process. I think it's very well done, and they captured what they needed to for not just the movie's sake, but the feeling that it gives the audience of anything uneasy.
Yeah.
So with that said, we shall wrap things up. That was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we are Film Asylum. Anyway, this is Colin Peters.
John Rushatter.
Fuck you, John. You didn't even let me say my name the first fucking time, prick.
That's right. I didn't let him say it.
I don't got anything to fucking throw at you. Obviously, Jeff Manfred at this point.
I got a bone to pick with you.
Oh, God. Thank you all once again for listening. Stay safe. Stay crazy.
Please, somebody help me.
Oh, yeah.